If I have a seed and I want it to grow up, I put it on a trellis, right? That's good, because today we have Seed and Trellis joining the club. Right here on the Backyard Gardens podcast, we're talking kitchen gardens.
To have a good harvest, one must plant good seeds and must also use the right kind of fertilizer. The carrots have grown large and firm. How good they will taste.
Welcome to the Backyard Gardens podcast, where we talk about all things gardening and give the information out for you to be successful in your garden, whether it's your first or your last. We are your hosts, Ben, the backyard gardener, and
Batavia, the front yard gardener.
one in the country,
One in the city.
Now get ready as we dig deep into this wonderful world of gardening as we learn to grow and grow for change. We have a special guest today. We have Stacey from Seed and Trellis. Everybody, round of applause. Or a bell. And you too, Leonard.
Welcome.
So, welcome, Stacey.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. Hi, thank you for having me.
So, tell us about yourself. First off, tell us what zone you're in, because last time we forgot to ask what zone our guest was in. So,
Zone 10A. I'm out here on the West Coast. I'm down here in San Diego County. So I'm in the suburbs in a little town called San Marcos. And we're inland from the coast, about 8 miles. So 10A.
Okay.
Yeah.
10A. So
10A.
So right off the bat, 90% of our listenership is already mad at you because you can grow.
I'm struggling.
More
I'm struggling. We had
know.
it was such a pleasant conversation as we were, getting prepped, and then you immediately hit me with a 10A.
It's okay.
It's tough,
We'll all recover.
It's tough. It's going to
It's
be
a tough
okay,
life.
though. You'll get there. You'll get there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Just keep looking at the calendar.
So you do kitchen gardens, correct?
I do.
Okay. So, I don't know what a kitchen garden is.
You don't?
I have not looked it up. I have seen this ever since we talked, like the first time I started seeing it more and more, but I don't know what a kitchen garden is. Batavia, do you know?
I will know in just a couple of minutes when Stacey tells us.
The kitchen
So
garden.
neither one of us know.
I mean, we could go technical, we could go interpretive. It's all of these things, right?
Both.
Well, as long as we don't swing ribbons around and dance in circles, we can go about it. So,
Well, I don't have any poles in my garden, but I do have trellises. So,
okay,
for now. Yeah.
we can do that. But give us the dumbed down version and we can dig deeper if we need to.
Yeah. So, a kitchen garden for me is all about a space, a working, active space that is close to your house, close to your home, and it is engaged in daily. It's not inside the house. It is outside, right?
Okay.
I mean, you could have an herb garden inside. There are ways to do that. But technically, you should be able to, just as you would use the living room, just as you would use the restroom, the kitchen, the living space, that's just another living space. The kitchen garden is a living space for your family, for your home, right?
Gotcha.
So it's essentially a place where you can go. It's accessible. It is growing your vegetables, your fruits, your herbs, anything edible, anything for flora and fauna. It's welcoming more than just the food itself. And it's essentially you go and you harvest frequently. It's not something that you're going to be planting gigantic pumpkins, gigantic zucchinis in rows and rows and rows. It's essentially a smaller entity, a controlled and little environment where you can manage it, where it's not overwhelming.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Yeah. Look, hold on. All right. You see that? You see, it was connecting. I was getting it.
I was taking. I was like, okay, because you told me when we talked before, you're like, you have a kitchen garden, and I was like, I don't know what she's talking. Like that stumped me even more because I was like, I don't know. Do I have something I don't even know? But I gotcha.
So you know what?
Does that
Buzzwords
resonate?
Yeah,
It does.
buzzwords for me were proximity, right? And the use, like the daily use, I think, because then I started thinking about some of the things that we plant, and then it's months later before we're really kind of enjoying it. My favorite tomatoes are one of those, but I love the idea of, this is something that we're interacting with as a family consistently. Well, look at that. I'm still not sure if I have a kitchen garden though.
No, yours is too big.
Oh, listen.
Well, how big is it? I mean,
833 beds.
It's not. It's not. I can't believe
So,
we're getting that close to 1,000.
What do you got? Like, you have somewhere around like 6 beds or something like that, right? Or more?
No, it's I think it's 16 or 17 now. They're varying sizes though. So it's just they're in my front yard and my backyard. I basically use all of that space.
So we have a running joke from the beginning with Batavia where each episode the number gets higher. So we actually had somebody who was like, does she really have 900 garden beds? I'm like, no, she doesn't. But
one day
we have to fill people in now because I forget that not everybody's been listening from the beginning. So,
but I feel like you probably do have a kitchen garden, Batavia, because it's in proximity to your home, right? Or do you not? Or are they not all on your property?
No, they're definitely all on my property.
Do you go out there every day? Practically.
During the season. Yeah, that's the key though. During the season. So in December and January, my weather really doesn't permit for that.
Right. Right. So, I mean, technically you do have a kitchen garden.
I'll take it.
So for me, what resonated with me is a room. It's another room of your house. That's what resonated to me because, I do look at the garden and for me, it's important to kind of set mine up. So it's like, you're in a space for a garden, it's not spread out here, there and yonder and everywhere. And then the other thing was, when you said it was a kitchen garden, I was like, oh, she's just going to come on here and talk about a garden that grows food. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course that's a kitchen garden. But, it makes sense, though, because it is, going into that every day. And a lot of people, I know if you just grow something, people are passionate. And it's like, yeah, I got a tomato in a pot. Great. But when you have like an actual garden, and most of the people listening to the show actually have gardens, they're very passionate about it. And it is a definite space and added on space to their house, which, by the way, you don't have to get a permit for. So it is a great addition to your property.
Yeah, it's in my days of HGTV, which is, most days now, expanding your living. How there's a lot of talk over the years of outdoor living and expanding your space. And, this is an outdoor room. So, yeah, that caught my ear as well.
So what makes...
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if I had a choice, like if I was, plotting out my land in my home, I would have all of my garden in one space versus the way it is today, kind of spread out. This is just what I have to work with, and I've chosen to do this. But that would be my desire, right? Right outside my doorstep. I'm walking out to, all of the lovely veggies and fruits and herbs and things.
So, the question is, you've got your dream garden, right? But is the sun right? If you were to put it right there.
Well, I just designed it a minute ago. I was just designing it like it's
it was like there
with my wand. Yeah.
Little garden
good point.
So it's always high noon, and there's a tree that floats over at noon. Every couple hours to give a little bit of shade to cool it off. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
That's that sweet spot where it's just like.
So, yeah, exactly. Just a nice little breath. So my question is, if you were to tell somebody, and you do tell people how to start kitchen gardens.
I sure
correct?
do. Yes, I do.
So what is a key component in having a successful kitchen garden from, let's just start from a design aspect.
Okay. Yeah. Let's start there. So,
because I saw one of your designs, you texted me or messaged me, whatever, on Instagram, and I liked it. So that's why.
Yeah. So I have a background in art. I don't know if you can see this painting.
Yes.
I painted it.
We can see a piece of it.
A piece of it. Here.
Yeah, a piece of it, and we like it.
Yeah. There we go. So I have for the background design, and why I feel qualified to share with you about design, right, is I went to art school. Yes. I went to the University of San Diego here, and I have a BA in fine arts, and I specialized in oil painting, printmaking, and figure drawing. And so that was my base, my aspect of investigating design in terms of shape, value, texture, line, color. These are all these things that come into play when you design anything, whether it's your garden or your home or a logo, or all these things have to come into play, right? To make it visually appealing, to your audience or to whoever's experiencing it. And I think what's really special about design, and when you're designing the kitchen garden, it's a 3-dimensional space. It's not a flat thing on the wall, right? It's something that you can walk into and experience, and then you have things in front of you and behind you, things, you have maybe cascading mountains or something behind, or the sun, how the sun comes up and casts shadows. So all these things, when I think of a kitchen garden and when I'm planning it, and when I'm thinking about which plants go where, I'm thinking about aesthetically, does it work in like a uniform feel? Like, does it look like, or does it feel like it's always meant to be? And that's when it's a good design. Does it intrude on the lines of the home, or does it include it? Does it is it carrying aspects of your personality? Is it carrying aspects of the architecture of your house into the garden? Is it a mishmash of just like things you've collected, or does it have consistent materials to give it structure and very appealing to the eye? So when I talk to somebody who's thinking about making a kitchen garden, it's kind of like, are we working with something that you have an existing garden? Do you want to revamp it? Like just how you would like, we really need to redo the bathroom. We really need to redo the kitchen, right? Yeah. So this is one of those questions, is like, so you want to design your bathroom, or do you want to design your kitchen garden?
Well, I want a bathroom in my kitchen garden, first of all. So if we can make that happen. And the other thing is, half of the answers I have to those questions you just asked were all the wrong answers. Does it go with the architecture of your house? I don't know.
No, you're speaking my love language, my garden love language. Like, not that I'm actively thinking about those things, but when I sit back and say kind of some of the do's and don'ts in my own garden, the things I do and don't want to do, some of it falls into what you're talking about. Like, people have commented about organization in my garden, and that's important to me because I don't want it to be a farm sitting on my front yard, right? There are things that are intentional, and I'm always stumbling into something I didn't know, right? I didn't necessarily think about it from the design aspect. It's just the way that I really want to feel and the way I want things to look when I approach them,
Right. That
Did you see me getting
experience.
Watery? Did you see me?
I saw you.
Oh boy.
I see you do it all the time, though, so I can catch it like that. Yeah. So for me, like the architecture part, I'm like, I don't even know, because when I built the garden, it's so far away from my house. Like, it's on my property, but it's in the back end of it, that I treat it like it's its own thing.
It's
you
its
know
own
what
zone.
I mean? Its own zone completely. So when you're talking about the architecture house, I'm like, shit, I have no idea. Like, now I want to be like, y'all hold on a minute, I got to go check, start looking. But
yeah, I mean, like, it takes a minute to look at your space. Like, I think the biggest thing for design for a kitchen garden is the pathways.
Oh,
and that's what I need to do right now. Yeah.
So take a look. Like, how's the flow? Right? Like, if you're walking out, to your front or backyard, or a mile to wherever your yard is, Ben, it sounds like it's really far away. So, think about your pathways. How can you create a good energy, not to get too woo-woo, but how can you get to it, right? And how can you walk through it? Is it stumbly? Is it, are there wheelbarrows in the way? Is there there's all that stuff. But a kitchen garden is tidy. in the sense that it's a focal point. It's something that you're proud of. It's something that you want to bring people into. It's something that you want to share, with, maybe if you have young children and family, you want them to have access to it and to not be afraid to mess it up. It's tidy, it's tended, it's accessible, it's beautiful. It can be beautiful the way that you plant things. And this is where I'm going to circle back. You asked me about that 4x4 design that I did, right? The little design that I did. So
yeah.
So
it was a circle design.
It's a square.
Was it?
It was a square.
This was months ago that I looked at it. So
it was a square. So
it was a square. Yeah, it's a square that it did have rounds. Yeah, I got it. No.
It had round circles in it to signify an aerial view, right?
Yes, that's what it was.
Of each plant. So when I design a garden, I always treat different zones of the actual garden differently. So generally, what turns over faster? You got your lettuces, arugulas, all your greens and things, right? So those are going to turn over fast. And so those are the things that you want most accessible. So we're not going to put them in the center of the bed. And generally they are shorter because they don't need that long time to grow, right? So those are the items that you would put around the borders of your garden. And you can incorporate low flowers, right? So you could do trailing nasturtiums or alyssum or things that are, low, right? Along the edges. And then maybe you harvest from those edges different weeks. And so you've got this awesome weekly rotation of harvesting lettuce on each side of the bed if you have a 4x4 and you can access all sides.
So are you saying that you would plant all the lettuces at different times so you'd be harvesting at different times?
That's called planning.
I've heard that before. Yes. I don't know where I've heard that. Do you recall, Batavia?
It may have been an episode where I'm trying to text you being to say there are fire trucks literally outside in front of my house. That's what I was trying to do. But it may have been on an episode where we talk about succession planting.
Yep.
One of Ben's favorite terms and discussion points.
No, because it's. I mean, so you're talking about from a design aspect too,
right?
Which I never talk about. I just talk about it as I don't want to get too much at the same time. Well, you know what I mean? So, but from a design aspect, that's even more interesting because it just kind of flows into this whole thing. Because I tend to look at my garden as a utilitarian place. It's here to grow food. And over the years, it has changed more and more now that, I'd say in the past 5 years, once I've gotten a real grasp on growing stuff more and more, it's turned in, last year was my first big dive into flowers. So I put zinnias in the corners of my garden. What a mistake that was. They were 5 feet long, high. That was a nightmare. But, that was pandemic stuff too. I was forced into the zinnias. I couldn't find marigolds.
So push those in the middle now, right? So those are 5-footers.
They take up too much room. I put them on the edge of the whole yard now, but that's my plan. You know what I mean? So,
So, I mean, circling back to that problem, right? So now you've learned, and I feel like the next step in is, what are your medium-sized plants? And those will go in the next row, right?
Right.
And then your taller plants would go in the center. So, if you wanted a focal point for pollinators, then your zinnias would have a nice little center in the center, and everything would look kind of like a triangular, and how it flows in terms of height. So that's just height, right? And then there's color. So maybe you would pick different varieties that grow different colors. So maybe you have a red lettuce variety or a green lettuce variety, light green, dark green, things like that. And you can kind of mix and match. And that's next level, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm trying to balance the function. So even when we're talking about walkways, right, the function of it versus the aesthetic of it. And it sounds like in kitchen designing and what you consult people on is kind of the combination of both of those things, right? I would never think to put the tallest plant or flower in the middle of my garden. But when I do things like when I design my flower bed out front, I do want things to kind of do the slope you're talking about, where they're growing and they're shorter on the ends and then they come up to a teepee point, right? So it's funny how I look at that and I look at the flower garden almost completely aesthetically. versus the way I look at the kind of vegetable and herb garden, if you will. And I haven't planted in all of my beds yet, and there is some temptation to put something really tall in the center. Perhaps a sunflower. I don't know. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so that's like one style of, designing the bed where you have 4 accessible sides. But what if you don't have 4 accessible sides? What if it's a border garden? What if you have a fence or something that is, behind it, or, maybe it's south facing, so everything needs to be planted in a certain height, so everything gets equal sun. So there's, there's different things that you have to take into account when you're obviously planning. And, if it's south facing, you've got a fence behind it. It's the same philosophy that you would put the low borderline plants more accessible toward the front, and then you would increase their height as they go. And, I mean, there's also that whole nother layer of companion planting, and, I know you don't. So, I'm a believer in companion planting. I believe in it.
We're partially believers. We're partial believers.
Don't speak for me. Don't speak for me. I'm back on the fence.
Now, I have a whole episode where we can go back and listen. We're like, yeah, I'm with you on that. So
I actually am. I'm companion planting on board for that with when you fold in flowers. Because, I have a love for flowers in general. So I can, even if I don't necessarily know for sure it works, I'm willing to give it a try.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, my whole... Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, like, companion planting can be more than, if plants actually grow well together. I think the big part that people forget about companion planting is what kind of soil does that plant like? Then you're going to plant it with that plant that also likes that soil. Those same wet conditions, put those together. If you can think of it that way, it makes companion planting a little bit easier.
Yeah, the thing is people, when they, and I say people like a general broad term, which is, how dare I, but when you look up companion planting for a garden, it ain't about soil type. It's about keeping pests away and causing other plants to grow. Like, I feel like what you're talking about is like friendly plants.
Yeah, friends and
foes. You know what I mean? Yeah, friends, so, but I agree with you there. Like, you would definitely not put, like, we grow cattails in our side yard because it's wetlands, but you wouldn't try and stick that in dry dirt. You know what I mean? Because it wouldn't grow. So I agree with what you're saying on that aspect. But yeah, when gardeners look for this in growing food, they're looking at like, what's going to keep away the aphids? What's going to do this and that? And,
But at the same time, we still practice that, right? Many of us know that you don't plant things that have completely different growing conditions together. Well, you do probably once, and then you learn that lesson, and then you don't do it anymore. But I don't know. When I listen back to this episode, I don't know. I'm intrigued by the idea of, I don't know, elaborating on what companion planting is, as long as you put an asterisk by it. So
yeah,
because my garden's all set up like borders. That's my thing. So everything's borders. And what I used to want to do is start like really super low, like 1 inch flowers or something, just kind of then go up. And I've gotten away from that now, and I kind of just go a little lumpy, so we'll see how it goes this year. We're kind of filling in other areas, but the biggest trick is finding stuff in that middle range that will go in our area. You know what I mean? There's plenty of low growing, there's plenty of high, but then it's that middle range that's tough, So we'll see how that works out this year. I'm a little nervous about it.
Just plant some more determinate tomatoes. Set.
Yeah, but this is all for flowers.
Oh, for flowers.
I'm not even putting vegetables or fruits there. So I know
put a list
Batavia
together
jumping
for
for
you.
joy.
I'll send you a list.
Send me a list.
I'll send you a list of mid-level, whether it's bushy or perennial or annual. We can get all into it. Different colors, full sun, medium
sandy
size.
soil.
Sandy soil.
Drought tolerant.
Got
See,
it.
that's the thing. And then you start going, and I've said this before, but like I used to think like, oh, flowers, that's bullshit gardening. And then I start doing it. I'm like, oh no, because you got to do full sun, light sun, no sun, part sun, shade, water, drought tolerant. Like, it's complicated, so It's been fun
But
for me.
if you have a garden coach, you just ask them and they'll take care of it. No stress for you.
We hash it out on air sometimes too, and it's pretty hilarious. I actually went back and listened to an episode where Batavia and I hashed one out, and then I thought back on it. I was like, no, it's pretty bad. So, but that's the whole point of this. We all learn together. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, absolutely.
So look, we're going to take a break for our sponsor, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what to grow in a kitchen garden.
Since you're listening to this, then something tells me you like to cook.
Hey, y'all. Miss Gardner and I have been busy whipping up some food in the backyard kitchen.
Check us out as we grow some of our ingredients.
But most importantly, we just try to get the recipe right. Available now on YouTube at Backyard Gardens.
Remember, if you grow it, we will cook it or can it.
Let's talk about, instead of designing what to grow, what's the best vegetable to grow?
What do you like to eat?
Is it that simple when we grow in there? Like, you just grow whatever?
You grow what you're going to eat.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do we do that though? Like, what do you recommend?
So I like to go through. Okay, let's talk about what. Wait,
first of all, I like your answer. You grow what you eat. It's perfect.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to want to grow radishes if you hate radishes. It might be pleasurable because you're like, look, I grew this, but if you don't like radishes, don't.
Well, for the texture aspect too, some people, if you get hung up in the different parts of the design, I know people that will grow stuff for texture, but
that's ornamental, right?
Yeah, I think that there's a part of this that says there's some people that the aesthetic is really important, right? So, these aren't folks that are like, I just want a row of vegetables that are coming to Stacey. These are people that are interested in the look and the feel and the experience. Hashtag it. The experience the garden gives them, right? So the design before the break that's a design. It's not a singular design when it comes to kitchen gardening, or at least that's my take on it, because I've clearly just become an expert in the last 25 minutes. So
yeah, we're good.
Yeah. I mean, there's all types of things that. So the first step that I like to offer when you're trying to think about and brainstorming, what do you grow, it's essentially what can you grow, right? Mm-hmm. Get your timing right? And what do you like to eat? So what I do first is I give my customers a grow menu sheet, and it's essentially write down the recipes that you want to cook. Mm-hmm. And then you break it down by ingredient. And then you put a little star next to the things that could grow. Not necessarily that you can grow, but all the things that grow. So maybe you're cooking.
Do you see how this is unfolding, Batavia?
I do. Do you see me leaning in and twisting my head side to side?
Yeah, because I don't mean to interrupt you, Stacey, but a lot of times I do mean to interrupt you, and I apologize though. But a lot of people, when you start the garden, I'm going to grow a tomato. But there's no thought process in the end game of what am I going to use this for, and we've talked about this a lot too, is like, and I guess we were kind of talking about kitchen gardens. I don't know, but we were talking about, designing a garden around a recipe, or a style of food that you grow. So,
exactly.
I mean, you wouldn't go into somebody who eats a lot of Thai food and find,
Italian.
A lot of Italian stuff. I like the way you went Italian automatically. It's like two polar opposites I couldn't think of.
I'm half Italian.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
So, but I think it's great that you are promoting that forethought into the garden.
Absolutely.
And that's important.
Yeah. So
I think something that we always get from the newer gardener is, where do I start? Right. So every time that you say a list of some sort, my kind of the organized version of me, that part of me sings, because I love a good list, and it sounds like you're giving, obviously they're playing a role in this. So we talked about on one episode many, many moons ago, if you could just walk outside and your garden was designed for you, would you love it? Would you enjoy it? And for me, the answer is no, because I want to have a hand in it, quite literally. So we're going to let you pick up on the list and the asterisks around the things that I'm growing.
Yeah.
At some point, we're going to end up designing my kitchen garden. That's where I'm nudging us. Go on.
Okay, we'll get there. So I'll ask you then. So what's like 2 recipes that you love and that you cook frequently, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and you're thinking to yourself, you know, I'm not going to be able to grow everything in this recipe, but I can supplement some things from my garden, and I can say, I don't need that in the grocery store. You know, so that the idea of the kitchen garden isn't to supply your entire meal, right? It's to highlight something special that maybe is difficult to find in a grocery store, maybe a variety that is, the taste is just obsolete, and you're just like, I have to grow this every year. You know, my black crims, or my certain kind of kale, or this certain type of lettuce or romaine is special to me. Maybe it has a tie to your family, and you're like, I want to grow this variety because it means something to me. Yeah. So there's more to just like, you know, I found this in a recipe book and I want to grow it. There's always a meaning and a history behind our recipes that we gravitate toward, right? And so to find a couple ingredients, whether it's an herb, a lettuce, a certain kind of vegetable, or a fruit, if you can bring that into your garden and grow it, and then teach your family how to grow it, that's how that tradition of growing keeps going. You know,
that's true. And I mean, you're developing a deep connection into growing your own food, you know, not only to supplying your family with the food, but that emotional aspect of bringing it in and encouraging people to think about those recipes that do strike that is important, because that's how you build long-lasting gardening relationships of some sort, you know?
Right. It becomes a tradition.
Yeah.
So Stacey, the blinking and the pursing of my lips, this is your sign for where I'm trying to compose myself. So just so you know, when you observe that, and obviously the most telltale is the sniffing and the snotting, but yeah. I was thinking about, I love beans and peas. I love pinto beans in particular, and black-eyed peas. And my space, I just don't think is really conducive to grow the amount of either that I would really enjoy. But I've mentioned this before to Ben. My grandfather, who's passed away last year, he ate okra on everything, you know. And so there's not a connection that I have with the pea or the bean, but there's not a time that I prep and cook okra the traditional way that he would eat it without thinking about him. So that there is a connection in so many things we do. I read somewhere that smells tie so much back to your childhood, you know, and I don't know. Do we have another break scheduled? I just can't.
Well, that's really sweet. I mean, I connect with you on that level in the sense that my grandfather, you know, he was an avid gardener. So was my grandmother. And up in Cupertino, they had a beautiful home. And it used to be orchards and orchards of apricots and cherry trees and avocados and stuff. And as, you know, suburbia life, city started creeping in, they had to sell the land, and they ended up with, you know, a large corner lot. And my earliest memories of growing up and having that connection of growing food were pole beans. And, you know, my sister's 3 years older than me. We'd go out there in our 80s overalls and, you know, pigtails, and he'd make us go through the aisles and pick, and he'd have the bucket at the end, and we'd have those sticky leaves all over us from the pole beans. And to this day, you know, Mom's still saying to me, so have you found the variety that Grandpa used to grow? Have you found it?
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm still looking. No, I'm still looking.
Okay.
It was like a flat Italian bean. You know, it was long and flat, and
I have a theory behind that, though. Behind growing back in the day, you know, and let's face it, that was back in the day. I know we don't like to admit it sometimes, but Tavia and I both have come to the conclusion that there were not as many varieties as there are now. So a lot of times we have to dumb it down when we think about stuff like that, like what happened back in the day, you know, like what my grandfather grew and stuff like that. And it's probably not as complicated as I would think for my grandfather, because he always grew tomatoes. And that was his thing. He would grow a tomato, he'd pick it and eat it like an apple. Oh gosh, I can't even think about doing that. But so, you know, I think about that and I'm like, well, what kind of tomato would he grow? And my mom was like, it's pretty simple. The most perfect handheld round tomatoes. That's what he would grow. You know, and same with his cherry tomatoes. Like now, if you go get cherry tomatoes, how many different cherry tomatoes can you get? You know, 50, 60 different varieties. Back then, there was like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was where was the easiest place to get the seeds, and that's where he got them.
Yeah,
So
it's access, not necessarily like he wasn't necessarily on the hunt for that particular tomato, but that became what was, you know, true to him. So he continued to grow it.
There was no Instagram where people tried to grow something fancy for clout. That's just saying. You know?
But isn't
No
that's
cucamelons.
you could still have a bit of the old and a bit of the new as a part of gardening, which is one of the things that I love about it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. There's that nostalgic feel when you're out there, you know, it brings back those memories.
Yeah, I mean, I just ordered some, I didn't even plan on doing this, but I got some nebula carrots. Wanted to grow some like fancy ass purple carrots. Why not? So I got some. Would never have done that before, ever. Never, ever. Like I always was like, I'm going to grow the same shit. I know it works. I'm going to grow it the whole time. But, you know, now it's like, yeah, I'll try it, see what happens. You know, it'd be cool to get and my son really drives me to do that, though. So, you know, when I got the parsnip earlier this winter, that's what kind of pushed me to do things like that. So
cool.
I think there is the difference, and Stacey mentioned this, and you're not growing to complete, like from start to finish for your meal. You're complementing your meal, where when our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents were gardening, you know, it was feeding families, right? You know, so the idea and the part that I'm intrigued by now is how gardening is a way to explore as well. You know, so I've had a good tomato and I can continue to grow that tomato variety, but I'm intrigued by the other hundreds of tomatoes, right? You know, I could go into how there's this whole concept of we can never be satisfied. We want more, but I won't go there. I will say though, I feel like gardening allows you to expand your palate, you know, expand your experience with different foods. And it took me years to get there, because I was originally like putting a tomato plant in the ground. I'm going to grow cucumbers because they're easy and I like them. You know? So Stacey, how many folks come to you that are like, I know that this is dirt and I know this is a seed, but that's all I know about gardening. So how many new gardeners versus those that, you know, want to perk up, energize their garden, remake their garden?
So the majority of my clients so far have actually been existing gardeners who want to elevate, who want to like step it up. I feel that they're looking for what they're missing, you know, like they've gotten to they've plateaued in a way.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's really fun to give them, you know, just essential tips that you just know as an experienced gardener, and sharing that knowledge. Like some would want to maybe, you know, a new surface facade of the box itself, you know, like maybe they want to elevate to a cedar or maybe a more permanent structure. Like I just designed a concrete edged perimeter garden, and it's incorporated with some modular beds. And so right now she has kind of like a mishmash of just like different containers and things that she's picked up along the way, and she's ready to revamp. She's ready to remodel her kitchen garden in that sense, right? Her space. Yeah. And so we went through probably 4 or 5 different layouts. And so with that thought in mind of, you know, crop rotation and like that's where the sun is hitting and budget and things like that, she wanted cohesion feel to her outdoor space to go with her new layout of her backyard. So, you know, I work alongside landscapers and contractors. So I do the design, I hand over the specs, and we work together with the customer to make sure that it, it feels good. And then her plan for her is to just grow through the summer and then break ground in fall so she can have the next spring a fresh slate, But
that's clutch to do that too. I mean, we preach that pretty hard on this show because I spent the whole winter remodeling my garden, and that's why I'm like, the last thing I got to do is the paths. That's the last.
Yeah,
it's
it should be the first thing.
It should be, but I had to tear out my garden beds and replace them, and it was just too much. So I just need to get mulch down on them and stuff like that. But they've been beds of weeds before, and we were standing out there the other day. My neighbor was over, and we were talking. And I was telling her about the different stuff I was growing. I was like, yeah, I've got to put something in because you can see that I walk in there because now it's just basically weeds along the edge of the bed and not in the middle. And it just looks rough. I'd rather it be solid grass than nothing else. So,
yeah.
But there's a part of what you're describing, and it's gardens are legitimately a part of landscaping. It's a part of, if you think about how much time and effort some folks put into like the perfect grass or, retainer walls or, their flower beds and displays, like insert garden, and that can be legitimately a part of your landscape. And so that same consideration can also be given to it. I'm team all of this because, I totally respect those that say I'm going to take a seed or a plant and put it in the ground because I want to grow food. But I think you can have it both ways. I think, you can do both of those things. Really enjoy the space you're in, especially when it's, let's go back, ding, 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 so close to your home, right?
Yeah.
Back to that proximity.
I think it's important, or not important, but fascinating that you're dealing with experienced gardeners that are looking to revamp because it's like, okay, I'm envisioning it being like, I've taken the step, I've grown the food, I know how to grow the food. Now I want to really enjoy my space. And I feel like it's like a real natural progression. You know what I mean? And it's like, I would imagine that you're fully like, if somebody came and like, look, I've never had a garden, I want to grow a garden.
Absolutely. I can help any level of garden, no experience.
Well, my question is, you're willing, I know you're capable of, but are you willing to be like, okay, then I'm going to walk you through how to grow each and every plant and all that, which can be a very tedious process. We basically do that all the time ourselves.
The only thing that you can do in that instance is give them the tools, give somebody one plant to focus on. If they're like, let's start with herbs. Herbs are like the entry for me.
Can I come give you a hug? Can I come over there and give you a hug right now?
Okay.
Batavia just threw up in her mouth because she hates.
So first, when Stacey said one plant, I'm like, she's speaking my language, but I just knew what the next comment was going to be, so I was bracing myself. We argue about this where he promotes so heavily herb garden. That's where you start. And that's not my view. So I'm okay with there being two people with one view on this show today and one person with another one. I'm okay with that.
That's okay. You can have your own. Let me. So the idea of starting with the herb garden is that it ties in with the fact of that active supplement of the kitchen garden, right? Yeah. It's not training somebody how to grow a vegetable garden. We're easing them into this daily ritual, right? You have to have a commitment. You have to start with, like, if you get a dog, it's a commitment. You can't just grow plants and then not water them. So the idea of starting with an herb is that they are less finicky. They're easier to grow. They kind of grow on their own. You would harvest them frequently if you like to cook. There's that satisfaction and joy, immediate pleasure. That's why I kind of push the herb thing first. There's a reason. But what would you suggest, Batavia, for like, you should start with this? What would you suggest?
Oh, I don't know if you're going to make a liar out of me because I've answered this question before and I don't know what the answer was before.
Well
Stacey's coming back on the show, boy.
I definitely would start with the thing that you enjoy the most. So I'm going to completely punk out with this answer and insert that vegetable. I mean, I think a tomato is one of the most satisfying things to grow. But if you don't like tomatoes, then let's not grow tomatoes. I think my answer previously has been, and I stick by it, leafy greens. Again, we're thinking about people that want to consume and in most cases cook with these vegetables. So I think those are easier. Now, I'm not in zone 10A. Oh, you see that? You see the shade I'm throwing there? So I know sometimes you guys are limited when it comes to when you can grow some of these things. But long answer and tap dance around tomato for a fruiting vegetable, and then some type of leafy green, salad green would be a really easy and good start, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
If you're anti, start with herbs, which I'm not anti.
No, you're not. So what's interesting is that I would say tomatoes or anything that fruits that converts from foliage to a flower, and then it has to be pollinated, and then it produces fruit, right? That's like the most complicated plant that you would have to tend to. But if you start with a plant that doesn't require any pollination, like the leafy greens, then it's a little easier.
Yeah.
It's easier, but the reward, the payoff is nowhere near
I know,
the same.
it's just a green.
And I mean, and that's the thing that you have to deal with too, is people want that gratification.
Yeah.
They want to see that happen, and they want to collect it and be part of it and be like, look at what I grew. I grew this 2-pound tomato versus look at these 5 leaves of lettuce. Like, you want to have a salad? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, now, as the years progress, you learn that, like, no, I'm happy with a basket full of greens. Like, I'm good. You know, I mean, I like a tomato or whatever too, but that basket full of greens is going to stretch. So,
but I think
there is a big difference.
What ends up happening is, and it's part of the challenge that Ben and I have when you're kind of, dripping on people in conversation, in the podcast, on Instagram, on YouTube, and others. You don't get a chance to have that real conversation with someone, which I'm sure, Stacey, you're able to do that with your when you're consulting people. It all depends on the who. So I totally agree when it comes to tomatoes have been in my garden every year since I've had a garden. And to me, they are easy. But as you were going through the steps, of course, I hear that it could go wrong. I had an experience with a good friend last year that's like, so these 2 tomatoes, is this it? So I know it doesn't, it's not easy for everyone, but I'm able to have the conversation about kind of their tolerance, how are you really looking for that immediate gratification? Are you going to toss it, and say to heck with it a month in, so what's your staying power when it comes to gardening? And that could change my answer. I'm always fearful of turning someone off to the garden or gardening. Now, someone that's coming to you for a kitchen design, it sounds like they have some skin in the game. So there's that too.
Yeah, there's definitely a commitment readily invested already in them. Like, this is something that they desire. Yeah. And it can be a desire for multiple reasons. It could just be for the aesthetics of, like, look what I have, versus, somebody might want a space where it's tended for them and they're not actually out there. They just want the gratification of going out and picking it and having somebody maintain it for them, versus there's another person who's very DIY and they're like, give me everything I need to know and I'm going to execute it. Just can you guide me along the way? So there's definitely different levels of investment in terms of commitment out in the garden. And it's
important to be that person too, that they can be like, hey, I have this issue. And call and be like, hey, what's going on, or whatever, or like have like a checkup or something like that, like a monthly meeting or something, because, we get a lot of questions and it's like, what's wrong with my tomato? I'm like, okay,
let's go through the checklist.
Let's go through the checklist. It's got this bug. Okay. Can we get a picture of the bug? And then it's like, by the time you get through it, it's like 30 minutes of conversation waiting on a message. Whereas you have somebody local that you can talk to is really important, because you can go by, there's a lot of different aspects you can do. So I think that's, a huge part of it. And I believe that is an excellent way to learn. We provide that virtually for people, by our conversations, but to have somebody and like a garden club or something, just you can get together with other gardeners and actually talk. Because let's face it, how many of you gardeners, I'm talking to all y'all out there listening, are like, oh yeah, I got like 15 garden friends and we all get around round table and we eat, pesto out of the basil we grew and have conversation. Like, that doesn't happen. It's a very independent hobby.
Yeah.
I'll call it a hobby. I'm actually not even going to call it a hobby. I'm going to call it a lifestyle. So it's a very independent lifestyle.
It doesn't have to be.
It does not, but it's like, there's people down the road, they grow, we don't talk. I try, but they don't talk. Maybe I'm weird. I don't know. Well, I am, but.
Go bring him some zucchini. Go bring him some zucchini. You'll see what happens.
No, because that's my zucchini. I'm joking.
And there it is, right?
There it is. I ain't sharing with you. Grow your own. So, Stacey, tell us about your garden.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that everybody listening right now is like, you know what? She's got an oasis. It's probably like huge waterfalls.
Going to her
down.
Instagram right now.
But like, in all seriousness, like, what's your garden like?
So my garden's young. Here. This last year when the pandemic hit, I really leaned back into gardening. I am a mom. I have two boys. And these last 5 years, sometimes there's just not time for the extra garden space. But this year, I made a commitment that I needed to bring that back into our family lifestyle. So we built, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 raised beds. Most of it is a border garden. They're all south facing. I've got some trellis structures that kind of connect them all. I've got some copper pole DIY style trellises for like lower and lean techniques and things like that. And I've reestablished a corner of my space for a flower garden this year. So I'm really excited about that. Yes.
Wait, Stacey, I'm going to stop you. You said lower and lean. Tell me what that is.
So lower and lean, you'll have to forgive me. I don't remember the gentleman who invented it, but he's well known in the garden community. And if I remember, I will tell you. Anyway, so the lower and lean technique is when you have a vining plant, like a tomato or cucumber or maybe a loofah or something like that. The idea is you have a trellis structure. And you have twine of some sort coming down to meet the soil. So you have these long twines coming down from the above. Let's call it like an upside down U structure, right? Some kind of a trellis. And you would attach, I'm having trouble explaining this, but you would attach your end of your twine with like a garden staple, like those garden staples, you stick it into the soil. And then you plant your seeds. So you do like multiples of those, and then you bring up your twine to the top of the thing, and you have excess twine. So you wrap it around like I think it's called you could do it around like a tomahawk hook is what it's called. And so you wrap like multiple feet around there, and you hang it on the top of the trellis. Now, as the plant grows, you're going to train it up one of those twines, right? Yeah. And there's these little clips. They're called tomato clips. So half of it clips onto the string and half of it clips around the vine. So as the plant grows, you're training it up, and then it reaches the top, right? Where else is it going to go? So if you let go the twine from the top, it brings down the plant, right? And it has more room to grow to the top of the trellis. So you do this with all of your plants, right? And then the lean technique, so you lower the plant from the top and then you lean it over, and that extends the length of the vine to however long your trellis is.
Sure.
It's super cool. So last year, my cucumber vine was like 12 feet long.
Yeah.
Because I was able to lower it and lean as I went. And people have these structures where you can literally go around in a gigantic oval through your garden space. And you could do this is how they grow vining tomatoes in huge hoop houses and things like that's how they do this. It's a lower and lean
Interesting.
technique. Yeah.
I've seen the lower version of that where the string comes down and then you're training that vining vegetable up. I've not seen or heard of the lean version of that. It sounds like a bit of maintenance, though, I will say. Yeah. Okay. But you can get a lot out of your space.
A ton
think
out
about
of
it
small
this way.
space.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's efficient. It may be more effort, but it's efficient. And, you know, that's what a lot of people are dealing with. So first of all, I want to say I don't have any problems whatsoever with the fact that your garden is young because my garden's young here. We all move, but you came into it with like, you know, knowledge of gardening and you rebuilt. And it sounds like it might be good that you kind of came back to it when you did because you had a lot more ideas, did you not, when you came back
Completely
to
inspired.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
And, you know, taking a couple years off and then coming back in the game inspired, I mean, it's a totally different experience. Not to mention you're now bringing in 2 children that are going to be completely engaged at this age.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you can go out and Batavia's sending me a message. It confused me. You can get them out there and planting in bush beans and, you know, they'll be like, oh my gosh. You know, like I made a deal with my son. This year you plant all of the big seeds. So he's going out there and planting all the big seeds this year, and he's pumped.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but you know, it's important too because I think a lot of people want to look at somebody in like your position or somebody else and think that you've had this garden for like 40 years.
I mean,
And
I've
it's
been
just
gardening
like-
on and off since, gosh, you know, it's
but I find that if you've been gardening on and off since you were younger, I feel like when you come back into it when you're older, you come into it hard and strong, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you live out your life. And it seems to be, you know, from what I read and the people I see, it seems to be the kind of the trend. It's interesting how people kind of trend in that way. Maybe gardening is like the final stage of life.
Gardening is not like cardio, as in cardio, like once you take time off, brother, it's hard to get back into it.
No.
But gardening, you can take a step away and then jump right back into it.
I don't know. I might have to disagree. Yeah, because gardening, when you're out there and you haven't shoveled in a while and you're lifting bags of soil, you are sore.
I literally
day.
I literally have a video on Instagram talking about not being in garden shape. I think I'm talking, and that's every year for me. But I'm talking about more of like from your experience, right? If you don't use it, it's not like you lose it when it comes to your thoughts around it, what you know to do, what you know not to do. So your mental garden game remains intact, put it that way.
Yeah, no, I was just making fun.
So we're running out of time here, but there's something that we do with guests.
Okay.
And we ask a series of questions. So we're going to put you on the spot now.
Let's
do it. So for Stacey with Seed and Trellis, what is the one thing that you love the most about gardening?
Oh, wow. I love the aspect of being able to learn. Just learning about plants. I think it's like this never ending rabbit hole of knowledge.
Damn, it is a never ending rabbit hole, isn't it?
That's cowbell worthy. All right. Go on.
I mean, it is because how many of us, and I'm talking to everybody too, y'all answer it at the same time in your cars and then when you're listening to us in your gardens like you should be. How many of us have been like, I need to look up how to grow that cucumber.
Oh my
This
gosh.
another technique. But how many years have you grown cucumbers? You know, 10 years later and you're still looking stuff up about it. So you're always learning. That's a good.
Always.
What's your favorite vegetable to grow?
Zucchini.
Damn, solid. Just right out the gate.
Okay.
Zucchini. Done. Interesting.
Surprising too.
Why is that surprising?
Well, just because of the trouble that I've personally had with zucchini.
Oh, it's a pain in the butt. But I love it.
Yeah.
I love that moment where you just can't keep up.
I don't get there much because of the squash vine borers, but that's a
I
different,
have historically, not the last
podcast.
couple of years, but yeah.
Okay, well, if you don't like zucchini, then my next one would be beans. Whole beans.
Okay.
That's number 2.
Yeah.
It's just so
Yeah, pulled
prolific.
beans.
I mean, there's just so much joy in being able to just let the plant do what it wants, and then it just gives. That's my that's the kind of plant I want. I want the plant that just wants to give.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does. And you can, I mean, there's no better feeling than coming with a basket full of green beans.
Oh man.
Or eating
And
green beans in the garden.
Yeah. Well,
you
for some of us.
Careful.
I like canned.
Don't eat them too raw. Don't eat too many too raw.
Then my final question is, can you provide everybody with a quick recipe from your garden? No, not from your garden, from your kitchen garden.
From my kitchen garden. Yes, I have several. Okay. Do we have any kale fans?
Kale, yeah. I had to go.
Yeah, I like kale. I like kale.
Okay.
I'm not a fan, but I like it.
Okay, so I love lacinato kale. You know, it's the dinosaur looking one, that variety. It's a salad. This is a salad. It's a it's a chiffonade prepared kale salad with roasted beets, clementines, candied walnuts. What kind of cheese? It's got blue cheese and like a light vinaigrette on top.
Love it.
So the idea is you do the vinaigrette. You can do your own or you can buy it. I like to make my own with fresh herbs from the garden. And you take your kale, you clean it, you take off the spine in the middle, right? Because it's super tough. You roll up your lacinato and then you chiffonade it, which is a very thin, tiny slivers, right, of the kale. So by doing that, you're breaking down the kale and it's not as like bitter tasting and not as kale-y tasting, right? You can eat it raw and it goes down a little easier. Massage the kale like a lot.
Damn it. 2 weeks in a row. I didn't even know to do that until 2 weeks ago. And now the second time in a row, somebody said massaging kale.
Massage the kale until it's nice and, glistening, get your hands in there, get it dirty, cut up your beets, put it all in there, put everything together. It's really good.
Yeah. Here.
So my personal question, which is extra, you're fine.
Okay.
You're fine. Zoom just ended, but that's fine. I grew one beet this year.
That's good.
I grew one beet. Like I planted one beet and I harvested one beet because I had a beet, a package of beet seeds, and I wanted to learn what beet I like to eat. So that being said, I didn't like that beet. What is a variety of beet that's not so earthy, or is there one that you would recommend?
Golden beet.
Okay.
Yeah. The red beets, those are definitely the earthier beets. I think if you want to go a little lighter, go with the golden beet. Okay.
There you go. Golden beets. I'm going to grow one golden beet this year. And I'll let you guys know. Just one. I'm not sacrificing too much until I've been burned on beets too many times. So
sorry to hear that.
That's okay. It's okay.
I am actually
Stacey,
going all the way in with beets as well this year.
Are you really? What are you growing?
I was looking up the names of them. You'll have to wait until a different episode to hear that.
Oh, how dare you? Okay.
The hook.
Well, Stacey, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
A couple places. So my website is seedandtrellis.com. Take a look around, and I've got lots of things to offer there. And I'm on Instagram. I'm highly present on Instagram, so it's also Seed and Trellis. And I've got a Facebook page as well, Seed and Trellis. Everything's Seed and Trellis.
Hey, that's easy to go. Easy to find.
Yeah, I'd love to connect with anybody who's interested in growing or interested in designing and learning more about how to make the growing space work for you and your family is my passion. So I'm here to help and here to give information. So keep the education going.
So everybody, check out Stacey at Seed and Trellis. Thank you for listening to us. I personally hope that everybody has picked up something on designing their garden, because to me, that's what I got a lot out of this, is just the design aspect, which made a lot of sense to me. And I think that's the hardest part that I had to deal with, is getting the design down on my garden. What did you get out of it, Batavia?
I can't wait to re-listen to this episode, because in all seriousness, because when I listen, as like all of these things resonate, we talk about these things, but we parse it out so much. We don't oftentimes bring all of these thoughts and concepts and ideas and lists to kind of one conversation. That's the reason why I'm so glad we were able to have Stacey on. But for me personally, I'm one of those gardeners that's like, oh, I want to look and do things differently. Now, I'm not going to move any structures around in my space at this point. But when it comes to planting and kind of the way that you're planting, because once you've done something over and over and over again, sometimes it gets stale, even if it is producing food. So it's reinvigorating, if you will. So yeah, I'm going to listen again. I'm going to take notes, because I wasn't able to do that here. And yeah, I'm hoping that everyone else got something from it. Please do hashtag BYG podcast, tag us in your feedback, reach out to Stacey, and grow kitchen gardens.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. We love you guys. And until next time, stay safe, be strong, do the right things. Go. You know what? Screw that. Get out in your garden and plant something. And until next time.
See ya.
Thank you. See ya.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you want to see what we're up to, or just stay up to date on all the announcements regarding the show or anything gardening, then you can follow us on Instagram at Backyard Gardens TV.
We love seeing what you guys are doing, so use hashtag BYG podcast in your posts, and we'll be sharing your gardens with the Backyard Gardens community.
And check us out on YouTube at Backyard Gardens, where we will post this show, all of our other shows, clips, and then also some gardening tips and just gardening entertainment. And you can see us at our website at backyardgardenstv.com. But that's it for today's show. So help us as we learn to grow and grow for change. And until next time, we'll catch you guys later. We'll call this one a wrap.
Now you know why people feel like celebrating at harvest time.
All over the world, people have feasting and good times when the crops have been gathered in.